Welcome to the Fans First Sports Network's Steel Curtain Network. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. I am here, as always, with Coach Kevin Smith, the head coach of the Ocean City Red Raiders, who are in the playoffs as we speak. So great news there. They've got a great test coming up this weekend. Kevin and I are usually on Mondays, usually after a big Steeler game. That's what Here We Go is all about. But we're after a big, significant day for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they finally got the wide receiver and they added some depth on defense. Nobody expected that second trade to come through, and it's very interesting. So first, let me welcome in Kevin. How are you, my friend?
What's up, Bryan, man? Yeah, great to be here. I'm glad to be having some news to talk about. That's exciting, and I'm with you. I thought one shoe was going to drop, the receiver shoe, but I definitely didn't see the other one. And the other one is worth being excited about as well. So lots of good stuff to talk about.
Well, the reason you're here is to tell us why to be excited about all of these guys. And I will go ahead and just recap for whoever does not know the details of both trades. I'll go ahead and talk about that. So right around after the 1:00 hour today, we learned that the Pittsburgh Steelers pulled off a trade for Mike Williams of the New York Jets, also late of the Los Angeles Chargers as well, former number 7 overall pick. The 6'4" wide receiver comes to Pittsburgh. He was being courted by the Steelers, went to the Jets back in March, and they didn't let him out of the building without a contract. And so that's what happened. The Pittsburgh Steelers never had a chance to go ahead and talk to him. Now, they traded a 5th-round pick. As you know, Kevin, the Steelers have going into this, had 2 5th-round picks. This is for the second of 2 5th-round picks. So this is the Kevin Dotson trade that they went ahead and made about a year and a half ago. And this is the compensation from the Los Angeles Rams. So of the 2 picks, they are only giving away the second of 2 5th-round picks. Now, right after that, after we did the Breaking News podcast, we learned that Preston Smith, I believe he's 31 years of age. He was a 2nd-round pick in 2015. He is with the Green Bay Packers, and he's had a lot of good sack totals the last 3 out of the last 4 years. And I'm including 23, 22, and 21 in that. They were all over 8. As far as sack totals. This brings great depth to the linebacker position as an edge rusher. So, Kevin, what was your first reaction when you learned about the Williams trade and the Smith trade?
Well, with the Williams trade, my immediate thought was that this is probably the best guy available at this point. You know, the Steelers obviously flirted with some of the bigger names and that never came to fruition. And I'll be quite honest, I'm not disappointed that they didn't move some big assets to land a Brandon Ayuk or a Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp would have been nice. I think he would have been an amazing scheme fit in Pittsburgh. But those other guys, I thought the asking price was really high. And I don't know if the Steelers necessarily need a star receiver, but they definitely need veteran depth. When you look at the top 3 receivers in that receiver room, George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin III, they've looked a lot better since Russell Wilson entered the lineup, and the Steelers can now kind of spread the ball around the field a little bit more. Wilson's able to get a little bit further through the read progressions than Justin Fields was, and he's a little more willing to pull the trigger on throws into tighter windows. And those guys don't get a ton of separation, so you got to be willing to make those types of throws. But if one of those guys went down, man, the Steelers were really thin because Scotty Miller's the 4th guy, and he's a nice sort of package piece. But you definitely don't want Scotty Miller absorbing a lot of reps as your number 3 receiver, especially since Arthur Smith's used a lot more 11 personnel than I think people anticipated. So there's absolutely a need for some depth in that room. And you go out and you get Williams, and you think about what he's going to add now to this offense. I think he now diversifies an improving offense He's 6'4", as you mentioned. He's made his living in the NFL really as a downfield receiver. He averages over 15 yards per catch for his career. I mean, back in 2017, he averaged over 20 yards a catch for the season. He can stretch the field. So he's a big guy. He runs that 9 route really well. That's just your straight vertical route. And you put him on the opposite side of the field of 6'3" George Pickens, who's one of the best in the NFL at going to get those 50-50 balls, those moon balls, as everybody calls them, with Russell Wilson, who throws that ball really, really well. And defenses now really have a difficult decision to make about the Steelers, because the way that defenses have operated so far this year in regard to Pittsburgh is to play with low safeties, or at least one safety, to get that extra hat in the box to defend the run, make the Steelers operate against heavy boxes, shade the safety to George Pickens, and then just single up on Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin. And with a vertical threat like Williams in the lineup, it becomes a lot harder for defenses to do that. If Mike Williams can win some one-on-ones down the field, defenses are going to almost be forced to play that second safety high, and now you've only got 7 in the box to defend the run. And if the Steelers are in their 12 personnel sets, those are those 2 tight end sets that they like as well, they can get a hat on a hat. And when Pittsburgh's been getting a hat on a hat in the run game, 7 to block 7, they've been really good. So I think the thing I'm the most excited about is the scheme fit, pairing a vertical threat like Mike Williams, who again, 6'4", and yeah, he's 30 years old, but he can still run and jump, with Russell Wilson, who throws a great deep ball, and putting George Pickens on the other side of the field, and now saying to defenses, what are you going to do? You're going to crowd the box and go one-on-one outside with those big guys, or are you going to keep your safeties high and bank that you can win 7 against 7 in the run game in the box? And I think the Steelers now have some diversity that they lacked before making this trade.
All right, so let's go ahead and ask this. Who benefits the most from Mike Williams coming to the Steel City?
Yeah, good question. I mean, Russell Wilson benefits because he gets another receiver who's good at what he does best. I mean, George Pickens benefits probably as well, because it'll be a little bit harder for teams to shade safeties over the top to him. But I'll tell you what, I think the guy who benefits the most might be Pat Freiermuth. I think Pat Freiermuth now, if you have to worry about those vertical threats, those outside receivers a little bit more, and you can't drop that safety low, the middle of the field opens up. And so now Pat Freiermuth probably has a little bit more room to operate. I mean, he's got 26 catches through 8 games. I mean, that's right around 3 catches a game. You just feel like he should be giving you a little bit more, and I don't think that's any fault of Pat Freiermuth. I just think the way defenses have chosen to scheme up the Steelers has made it hard for him to operate in the middle of the field, because they haven't had that second receiver who can take the top off. And now they do. And so you open things up for Freiermuth in the middle of the field. And again, I use the word diversify. This offense diversifies even further. And that's exciting.
I absolutely feel like the running back room benefits from this, but Calvin Austin III benefits from this too, because just like the middle of the field's opening up, we have seen, especially against the Raiders, when you throw that ball over the middle and you get Calvin Austin III in space, look out.
Yeah, you think now about teams that want to play the Steelers in cover 2 with the safeties high and those crossers. Now you got to have linebackers running horizontally with Calvin Austin. That's a mismatch. The only thing that makes me nervous about Austin is at 5'8", he's a little bit hard to locate when he crosses the middle of the field against, with all those big bodies piled up in there. But if the Steelers can move the pocket, you can run him on some Dover concepts. That's the deep over route. So if you picture an 11 personnel set with, say, the Steelers with a slot to the left. So Calvin Austin is now lined up in the slot to the left, and George Pickens is split out wide to the right. Yeah, and now you have Pickens running the post route, taking the near safety with him. You have Williams running a vertical on the other side, pulling out the far safety, and now you have Austin run that deep crosser off of some play action, maybe a half roll boot something like that to get him behind the backers. And you hit him with space to run. And obviously we've all seen what he does once the ball's in his hand. So you're right, Brian. I mean, it's really a trickle-down effect. Just about everybody in the offense stands to benefit from this addition.
Fans are complaining. Some fans are complaining that a fifth-round pick was way too much for Mike Williams. However, the Steelers were in a position where they could not trade their sixth, they could not trade their fourth, because Justin Fields is going to go ahead and account for one of those. Either the sixth or the fourth. It depends on his playing time. So one of those has to go to the Bears. Right now, if all goes well, Russell Wilson continues on the trajectory that he's going, that it will only be a sixth-round pick. But the Steelers did not have a sixth-round pick to go ahead and trade because you can't predict how much playing time Justin Fields is going to get. So what do you say to fans, Kevin, that are not happy with giving up a fifth?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, you look at the value you're getting this year. Obviously, the Steelers feel as though they have a shot this year to make a run. And why shouldn't they feel that way? There's no dominant team in the AFC. I know the Chiefs are undefeated at 8-0, and I know they continue to just find a way to win football games. But they're winning games by the skin of their teeth. I mean, they're really not playing dominant football. Their offense is yet to really get going. They look as vulnerable as they've looked. And again, I know it sounds weird to say about an 8-0 team, but they look at about as vulnerable as they've looked in years. The Ravens look absolutely dominant at times, but they've also got 3 losses. And the Steelers have gone 7-1 against the Ravens in their last 8 meetings. So you have to feel confident that you can compete with the Ravens. The Bills look good, but they haven't been able to get it done in the postseason. So why shouldn't the Steelers feel like we got a shot this year? And you only have Russell Wilson under contract for 1 year right now, and you don't know what next year is going to bring. I mean, maybe they re-sign him, but that's a maybe. And you've got a veteran team, and guys like T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick, they're still in the prime of their careers, but they're getting older. Cam Hayward, how many more years does he have? Why not go for it if you're the Steelers? You got a really great roster mix right now in Pittsburgh of veterans in their prime, good leaders, and really, really good young players. The last 2 drafts have been excellent for Pittsburgh, and you're getting great contributions from rookies and second-year players. And you're mixing that in with established veterans. And you have questions like, again, is Wilson going to be back? Is Najee Harris going to be back? What will this team look like a year from now? And the answer is we don't know. So why hold on to that second, 5th round pick? I mean, I can't rattle off a laundry list of 5th round picks to you off the top of my head right now, but I would be hard pressed to come up with a 5th round pick in recent years that has made a significant contribution in Pittsburgh. And by significant, I mean on the level that Mike Williams is going to make this year. This is a go for it move. And the Steelers should absolutely be all in this year because they're in first place in the AFC North. The AFC is absolutely up for grabs. And why not Pittsburgh?
Absolutely. So let's go and take a quick break. We'll be back right after this, and we are going to talk about the Steelers' second edition at the trade deadline. All right, we are back on Here We Go, the trade deadline show. It's a special edition here. The Pittsburgh Steelers pulled off 2 trades on the trade deadline day, so hats off to Omar Khan for that. We already talked about Mike Williams in the first half of the show. Let's talk about Preston Smith, the veteran. Kevin, this one came out of nowhere. I did not have this on my bingo card. Did you?
No, but man, that was what a pleasant surprise this was. Because Obviously, the Steelers are concerned about the depth that they have at the edge rusher position. When you look at the fact that right now Jeremiah Moon is taking reps in the rotation because Nick Herbig isn't all the way back yet, and you worry, man, how many reps do you want to give TJ Watt? And you recognize that Alex Highsmith has been dinged up at various times this year and throughout his career. How many reps do you want to be able to give him? Think back to last year. Boy, the Steelers had a great four-man rotation at the position when they had Watt and Highsmith and Herbig and the veteran Marcus Golden. Well, Marcus Golden retired from football, and the Steelers have not been able to really have that fourth guy this year on a level that Golden provided. Golden was like a perfect addition because he understood his role. It wasn't the Melvin Ingram thing all over again. Melvin Ingram was a really good player, but he didn't want to accept a backseat role. He didn't want to be a role player. He didn't want to be a guy who was maybe only going to get 15 snaps a game. And that's really what the Steelers need, man. They need a veteran who can get it done, 15, 20 snaps a game. You spell Watt, you spell Highsmith. You give those guys the opportunity to take a little less wear and tear on their body. I mean, Preston Smith's got 68 sacks in his NFL career. I mean, this is a guy, he was a starter in Green Bay. And, I immediately when the Steelers made the trade, my first question was, all right, well, why did Green Bay give up on this guy? He's a good football player. He's 31 years old, almost 32, but he's not past his prime. And again, he's starting in Green Bay. And it seems like when you look at it that they've got a couple young guys, in particular Lucas Van Ness, who was their number one pick a year ago. Steelers fans might remember him coming out of Iowa because there was said to be some interest between the Steelers and Van Ness. And Van Ness has not gotten as many reps as a lot of people in Green Bay believe he should, and that maybe the Smith trade is opening the door for Van Ness now to move into the starting lineup. They think he's ready and he needs those reps. And Smith, also a free agent at the end of the year, could have been a free agent at the end of the year in Green Bay. And I guess the thought was, hey, they'll get something for him. So the Steelers only had to move a 7th round pick to acquire him. And in acquiring him, they find the piece that they've been missing since Marcus Golden left. And now you get that 4-man rotation back. Now you get that Watt and Highsmith rotation with Herbig and Smith coming in to spell them. And it's perfect, man. You're going to get good production out of Smith and Herbig, whether you play him as a tandem or you play him as individual substitutions for Watt and Highsmith. They're going to be high motor guys. Smith's going to know, man, if I'm getting 15 reps a game, it's 15 reps I'm leaving on the field, man. I don't have to save anything. I'm going to be full motor all the time. He's a high character guy, well liked in the Green Bay locker room. He's a pro's pro. He's a Steeler, man. He's a guy who the Steelers like to go out and acquire because they know he'll be good in the locker room and they know that they'll get production on the field from him. So that was a really pleasant surprise, having to only part with a 7th round pick for a guy who is going to be able to really round out that edge rusher room.
All right, let's look at his sack total just the last couple of years. In 2021, he had 9, 2022 and 2023, 8 each. So you mentioned 68 sacks. Well, there's a good bit of them right there in 21 through 23. He has 2 sacks so far in 2024. Definitely not shut out. But yeah, I see what you're talking about. They're getting something rather than lose the guy altogether. And when you're on this side of 30, you make decisions, business decisions like that. And once again, the Steelers are getting a high character guy. This is a perfect situation for Preston Smith. So I absolutely love it. So your final thoughts on Smith?
Just again, man, pro's pro, locker room guy, Steeler, good scheme fit. I don't know this for a fact, but I believe he'll accept his role. And a guy like that, and you think about, you're 31 years old, you're 32 years old, you're near the end of your career, you get traded. Oftentimes, and you're not being traded from a second-rate franchise. You're being traded from the Green Bay Packers, which is a annually competitive team, probably going to make the playoffs again this year. Storied franchise, great stadium, Lambeau Field, great fans, all that. And a lot of times a guy like that will get traded to a Jacksonville or a Tennessee or a team that doesn't quite have the pedigree traditionally, or, is having a bad season, and you kind of play out the rest of your year. And maybe you start asking yourself some questions about, is it time to wrap up your career? But instead he gets traded to the Steelers. And that's a whole new lease on life, man, right? He might not have the same role that he had in Green Bay, but he's coming to another storied franchise in the thick of a playoff race, in an unbelievable environment, playing in front of unbelievable fans. I mean, he's got to feel, I don't know if I want to say rejuvenated, but certainly energized by that move. And veterans like him who still believe that they have some fuel in the tank to burn, they get that chip on their shoulder, man. They get that, all right, they gave up on me mentality. And now you come to Pittsburgh and you come there saying to yourself, I'm going to prove to people I can still play. And I think the same is true of Mike Williams. Mike Williams signs that contract with the Jets, and then pretty quickly it feels like, they then sign Alan Lazard, who's one of Aaron Rodgers' good buddies, and then they eventually move on and acquire Devontae Adams. And then Rodgers kind of throws Mike Williams under the bus in some press conferences saying, he's blocking the wrong guy and running the wrong routes. And it kind of feels like the Jets just gave up on Mike Williams. So you have these two veterans who have both had really good NFL careers, who both still have, can still play a little bit. And they come to Pittsburgh for the back half of what's going to be a difficult schedule, and they've got stuff to prove. And it feels like, hey, these guys are really going to help. They're going to be contributors. So I think the Steelers are undoubtedly better today than they were 24 hours ago.
I love it. I love your assessment. Once again, Preston Smith goes for the Steelers' first 7th round pick in 2025. They do have 2 total, so that's a good thing. The Steelers, they give up a 5, give up a 7, but they also have another 5 and another 7. So that's great news. The one spot where they're not going to have is either going to be they're not going to have a 4th or they're not going to have a 6th. And right now, I'm banking that could possibly be not having a 6th. Real quick, the Steelers play Washington this weekend. They made a big trade today. They picked up Marshawn Lattimore, the all-pro corner. The Cowboys added a wide receiver. They paid a whole lot more to a 4th-round pick to get Jonathan Mingo. The Bengals, in their running room, they have added Khalil Herbert, especially with Zach Moss going down. That's for a 2025 7th-round pick. The Lions get a replacement for Hutchinson, getting Zadarius Smith, and they gave up a 5th and a 6th-round pick, 1 in 25, 1 in 26. They give back a 26 7th-round pick there. So those were all the trades today. Not a whole heck of a lot of trades, but ESPN had a poll asking who won the trade deadline, and they're saying the Commanders and the Steelers won the trade deadline. So
I've read some really good reviews of what Pittsburgh did. I like what Washington did. I like what the Lions did. I mean, I think that was a necessary piece to add with the Hutchinson injury. The Dallas Cowboys, I mean, they remind me of a team that's like in a sinking rowboat, and they're bailing it out with a bucket, and they're throwing the water right back in the back end of the rowboat. They're just not. You trade a 4th-round pick, man. That's a much more valuable pick than what the Steelers traded, which is going to be on the back end of the 5th round. I think the separation in the draft often occurs right around the middle of the 4th round in terms of guys that regularly contribute or make the roster and guys that don't. And Dallas has massive problems on defense, massive problems on defense. And now their quarterback's going to be out. I mean, Dak Prescott's going to be out now for I don't know how many weeks. Why would you move a 4th-round draft pick for? I know their run game, they don't have a good running back. I know they needed a running back. I get all that. Maybe they feel like they need the running back now because the quarterback's not there. They can't lean on Prescott, and they're going to have to run the football to win. But to part with that 4th-round pick in the midst of what looks to be a lost season, that just seems reckless to me.
Absolutely. So it's time for us to get on out of here. Kevin, thank you so much. We will be going ahead and checking out all of your stuff. You wrote a great article. When does that hit on steelcurtainnetwork.com?
Yeah, so that'll be out today, Wednesday, which is on the Mike Williams acquisition. And Call Sheet podcast drops every Thursday. So check that out if you can.
All right. So for Kevin Smith, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. We thank you as always here for following us on the Fans First Sports Network and the Steel Curtain Network. Remember all of your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. There's so many of them, and we have them covered here from A to Z. So make sure you check it on out. For Kevin, I'm Bryan. We ask you one thing. Please keep your feet on the ground.
Keep reaching for those hypocycloids.